No Marcus Smart, no Malcolm Brogdon, no problem. Luke Cornett reverse dunked the Celtics into their 8th straight win, and Chris Forsberg from NBC Sports Boston is here to talk all about it next on First to the Floor.
Who's going to be first to the floor here? And it was Marcus Smart, as he usually is.
Brown drives. That's not the first time we've seen a superstar in premium white sacrifice the body.
Hey, welcome into another episode of First to the Floor. Ben Vallis here. Thank you for joining us. Hope you're doing well. We've got a fun little post-game pod for you tonight. The Celtics getting their 8th win in a row, defeating the Hawks of Atlanta in Atlanta. Spoonie and Jake are both here, but joining us to talk all about this one, a very special guest from NBC Sports Boston and host of the Celtics Talk podcast, Chris Forsberg. Forsberg, welcome. How you doing, sir?
What up, y'all? What's going down?
Celebrating the 8th consecutive win of the Celtics.
Have we started printing finals tickets yet?
Oh, yeah.
Is that how we're doing it?
Mm-hmm.
I was doing it at 4 and 3.
Absolutely. So look, something, Forsberg, that's been something of a theme here for the Celtics early in this season is the maturity and I guess this ability to find a way to win. Tonight, no Malcolm Brogdon, no Marcus Smart, leaving a lot of us, I think, rightfully thinking, we might be in trouble here against what has been a pretty good Hawks team thus far. Not the case at all, really, as the Celtics easily, like we said, notched their 8th consecutive win. Chris Forsberg, what was the method here for the Celtics? How did they find a way to win in this particular instance?
Have an awesome bench with guys like Hauser who just make you forget that you ever had bench woes last year. Like, isn't it crazy? You talk about the maturation, and certainly like the overarching theme is like just how everybody has taken steps forward, and most notably Jason Tatum and being the MVP candidate like he has been so far. But it's like, what blows my mind is it was like 3 months ago, right, that the Celtics couldn't dribble the basketball without kicking it into the third row, and their bench sucked. And now, like, neither of those things are true. And normally teams don't fix things that quickly, let alone have a historic offense and start the season 12-3. And it's all pretty preposterous. So it's nights like this where I felt like Tatum looked like a dude who was sick of playing 40 minutes and didn't want to have to grind to get buckets. And, you know, like he's earned that right to have a couple nights like that. And yet, what a luxury to be able to take Sam Hauser and Peyton Pritchard, who was stacking up DNPs like crazy, and get to the finish line of a game like that. Not only get to the finish line, but be up 31 at one point. Like they've won a lot of different ways, but they haven't really blown teams' doors off consistently. And to do it against a team that, like you said, we're all sitting there thinking, this might get dicey because no Malcolm and no Smart to defend this backcourt. And it really wasn't ever dicey. So shout outs to this team. I don't know what they did for 3 months except like be angry and like yell at themselves or what. But they're like a team possessed right now. They just have a clear goal and they're hell bent on doing it.
There was a Derek White, Grant, Hauser, Cornett, Pritchard lineup in the third, and they extended the lead. It's just like Derek White was kicking DeJounte Murray's ass. Underrated revenge angle. I didn't think of until
Spurs bench angle.
Yeah,
Totally.
it's like, you got traded for 3 firsts. I'm kicking your ass tonight, and he took his lunch money.
Could that bench lineup beat the Lakers?
Definitely. By
100%, right?
Yeah, not even a question.
Can you imagine saying that last year? Like any group combination that the Celtics could trot out there, would you think they could beat like a G League team? No way. Now we're like, they could take down LeBron and AD at this point, the way they're playing. It's wild.
Yeah, and I mean, Derek White it's like we didn't even miss Smart. He gave you a classic Smart game with the 2 questionable step backs that he made, 10 assists. I think he had 5 or 6 rebounds, 16 points. And yeah, he was taking it to DeJounte. Trae Young could not stay in front of him. And that is like, I'm kind of scared of the Hawks just because I'm scared of Trae Young, but man.
You should be scared of the Hawks.
Yeah. But defensively, Trae is just so bad. And I don't know how you build a championship team around that. And then what has happened to John Collins? His usage rate is from like 21% down to 15% this year. I saw he was like coming up to set a pick, and him and Trae were like yelling at each other on the court at one point. So the Hawks were kind of a mess. I was shocked to see it, honestly.
The Hawks make no sense. Like
No.
fifth in defensive rating coming in, and I'm looking at this team, and they got pasted for 126. I'm like, how does this happen? But I guess things are just weird at the start of the year, and I just don't see their roadmap to being like a legitimate contender. Their backcourt's super good. It's going to win a ton of games, and then it's going to get to the playoffs, and like who's carrying you at that point if Trey's not getting 50 a night? So it's going to be tough for them.
Yeah, I think this is going to be really good for the national narrative for the Celtics. Like now, you know, we're going to see all the national pods be like Celtics explosions, but the Hawks are, I think, kind of living off some pretty easy schedule stuff. Like the Sixers, no Harden. They got to play the Bucks with no Drew and Middleton. Like, and then today was supposed to be another one for those. But like, yeah, I think that they're crashing back to earth. Cavs lost again today. Like, season a different class.
Yeah, it's interesting because the Hawks have just beaten the Bucks twice, as you said there, and we don't get to see the Bucks until Christmas. But based on the rule of the circles of victory, we are officially better than the Bucks now, right? Having beat the Hawks, that's just science. That's just how it works. Forsberg, if I were to ask you who has the best plus minus in all of the NBA. Single player plus minus. Yes, it is. Yeah, great game.
Obviously,
Get that loaded. Locked and loaded.
Yeah.
30 with a scope. What's Eddie calling him? 30 with a scope. Like, you know, it's again. So here's what I can't shake, and I thought it was a cool juxtaposition tonight is you got Gallinari on the road for the first time because he has Atlanta roots and probably wanted to be at that game and just be out there around the team. Does this happen if Gallinari doesn't get hurt? And like, think about how we all felt when the succession of him getting the diagnosis from being, oh, it's not a sprain, it's a tear, to Rob going down, to the whole Ime fiasco, and like how like awful we felt about the season at that point, and just like this little dark cloud above you. But in that focus, like, does Sam Hauser ever even get the opportunity? Like, there was raves about him in the preseason and like how good he looked in some of these games, and some people were wondering why he didn't get more of an opportunity last year. I think some people forget he busted up his arm pretty good right before the playoffs. Like, there wasn't going to be an opportunity for him to really kind of roadmap his way back there. But there wouldn't have been this many minutes, this much of a chance if Gallinari doesn't get hurt. And now I think they have not only an even better version of Gallinari. Like, he doesn't do everything. I missed the post-up opportunities and the size, but I mean, now you get a guy under contract 3 years, $5.5 million, whatever the stupid number is, and boy, did they need that. Like, they needed low-budget players to fill out this rotation, and I just think it's a revelation for this team beyond even just the fact that he can go out there and have double-digit scoring when you've kind of needed it.
We have bonded over mutual adoration for Aaron Neesmith in the past, Forsberg. Is it safe to say that Sam Hauser has like filled that gap for you? It certainly has for us.
Yeah, I was gonna say I still sometimes check the Indiana box scores just to see how my dude's doing. You guys will appreciate this too, because sometimes you have to scour like dark corners of the internet looking for advanced statistical nuggets. And the NBA has this thing. I think it's powered by like Microsoft. And for the first like week or two of the season, Aaron Neesmith was rated one of the highest like distance between defender and ball handler. Like, he was dogging players. And I was like, oh, here we go. This is what I was talking about. Like, he can get out there and be a hound and like knock down threes at some point. And I think he went every game after that. He went 1 for 10. And the NBA tracking had him getting torched defensively. And I was like, all right, you know what? Sometimes you just swing and miss. I love this style of play. And between having to watch Sadiq Bey so many times lately, and just the fact that it didn't pan out. Now I wish I could take my time machine and tell them to just play Hauser in those minutes.
Yeah. Tonight for Neesmith, 18 minutes, 0 for 4. Team worst, -3. Oh, actually, no, Benedict Mathurin was worse. But
I bet he like dove into the front row to save a ball at some point, and I would have really respected the hell out of that hustle.
Oh, no question.
Probably had a really impressive rebound, you know?
Yeah.
Probably injured a teammate trying to like keep a ball alive or something. Like, I will miss the Aaron Neesmith experience despite the warts.
Yeah, I think you and me both, Forsberg, but I'm not going to tune into many indie games, I don't think. But I think one of maybe the most impressive things about this win is Tatum and Brown, and Tatum especially, were not even that good. I mean, Jason Tatum was ice cold from three. He did chip in with 8 assists, 7 boards, and was a ridiculous plus 28. But what do you,
Chip in.
I know.
Always.
I know. It's ridiculous. He's a plus minus god. And then I do think one of the big things I don't love about DeJounte Murray with Trae Young, there were a couple plays where Tatum just posted up DeJounte and he just put him into the basket and had an easy layup. So it was nice to see Tatum kind of get to his shots a little different way. But yeah, did it feel like he was floating a little bit, or am I crazy?
Oh, 100%. No, like it just, again, I think he looked at that team and it's like, this isn't the sort of matchup that I can just kind of force the issue. And feels like now, what is this, 3-4 games in a row where every call goes against you and you just feel like you're not getting anything going at the basket. So, but again, he's completely earned that right to just be like, I am running a little low on fumes here. I just don't have it. Like, someone else picked this thing up. And normally in that instance, you would hope it'd be Jalen, but same thing, foul trouble and all that, even on his like home return to Atlanta. But no, like the fact that Tatum can still, what do you have, 6 assists in the first quarter?
Yeah.
Just recognize that, look, I can just sling this ball around. Everybody else can hit threes and we'll be fine and we'll figure this thing out. That's all part of the superstar maturation. Like, I feel like, nice he hasn't had it. He at least gets on the glass, does something that impacts winning. And that doesn't happen a year ago. Like, it's just nice where, you say, is he floating? Well, no, we know because he disappears for 3 quarters and just doesn't find a way to impact the game. And, I know that's not going to help his MVP case, but if you watch him every night like we do, you notice like, okay, there's not that game where he just disappears completely. And that's huge for this. Plus 28 is ridiculous for the way he played.
Yeah. Spoonie, I liked how you mentioned the post up, because I think the first half he was like, it was one of those games, I think we've seen a few of them where he's like, if I get my threes to go, we're going to just walk out of this game. No worries. They didn't fall. Third quarter started and the Hawks were kind of bringing it back a little bit. Second half, Tatum was 3 for 6, 2 for 2 from 3. He reined back in the 3-point attempts, 4 for 4 from the line. He just, when they needed a bucket, he got in the post, got himself to the line, and he just kind of recognized that the shots weren't falling. And again, I think that's just part of the maturation process where he's like, I know I can do other things to affect winning. And also now he can really trust these guys. Like, now that Pritchard has his swagger back, like that Tatum Pritchard pick and pop last season was like deadly in the regular season. So it was good to see kind of the reemergence of that a little bit. So yeah, I just love seeing him kind of settle it into the second half and focus on different things.
I felt like the team defense was much improved in this game. It seemed like there was a lot of hustle and effort in terms of just like contesting shots and getting back in transition defense. We saw a number of times, after unfortunate turnovers, guys like Grant Williams get back and disrupt transition offense on the behalf of the Hawks there. What did you see in that sense, Chris Forsberg? It seemed like, that's obviously been, I guess, a detractor for the Celtics so far this season. It really felt like they stepped it up in this particular game.
I was telling Eddie House, like, if you'd asked me a week ago, the defense would have been a concern. And you always have the crutch of, like, Rob's going to be back and it's going to look better. But you still couldn't always be assured that, like, why is there such a steep drop-off from what we've seen? And, so I had some fears about that the offense is so good that they just never kind of engage in the way they did last season, the way they had to at times last season. And I think the fourth quarter of that OKC game with the way that, Derek and Peyton Pritchard just bullying Josh Giddey. And then tonight, there were spurts where it was just like, okay, where they're just like, we'll just be a great defense for as long as we need to. And that's enough to turn the game. I would love them to find more consistency. And again, I think it's a lot easier to do that when you have Marcus and Rob and Malcolm even on the court. But now that I've seen glimpses, I just feel better about the way that they perform. And like, I'd like to see it over a longer stretch. And, I think if you honed in over this win streak, and of course, all those numbers are going to be pretty glossy, but I think they're probably closer to a top 10 defense now. I know I looked at it the other day and, for at least 6 of the 7 or whatever, they had crawled into like 9th or something like that, and still not where they should be. But maybe I say that, and yet maybe that is where they're supposed to be. And I do think there's just a correlation. When your offense is humming to such a level there's a natural tendency not to keep your foot on the gas as much defensively. And right or wrong, like in a perfect world, if these guys were robots, like you could have both, like they could be really great offensively and really great defensively. It just doesn't work like that. And so I do think they need to sort of figure that balance out. Like, okay, are they just going to be a historic offense all season? Like they have the potential, but if you turn that down one notch to ramp your defense up too, is that a better balance of what you could be? And so that's on Mazzulla to figure out what the identity of this team is going to be necessarily. Are they just going to be really good when they need to be defensively, or are they just going to actually get back to being defense first?
It's also really hard to defend at a super high level when you're playing as fast as we are offensively, because one, it's just going to be an up and down game. Like it was frustrating to watch our offense at times, but there's kind of a method to that madness where you just grind the game to a halt. Don't let them get out in transition as my light turns off while I'm talking here. Don't let the other team get out in transition, and that lets your defense get set up and just kind of choke the life out of them. Like that team was a chokehold, and this team is, a machine gun or a howitzer, if you will.
Howitzer.
Yeah. So I wonder if Joe, if that's the way to do it, to find that balance, is to dial down the pace just a little bit. As much as a fan watching, I don't want them to do that because it is so fun to watch right now.
I think the defense is going to normalize in that top 10 range. Like even after today, I think they've already updated it, and the Celtics are up to 16th in the season. So I think it'll get back to it in the end. Forsberg, like that point, like you see it when they've needed it a few times in these wins where they're just like cranked it right up, and not only is the offense happening, but now they're just you said the bullying Josh Giddey thing, which really hurts my soul. My large Australian son. It's okay.
I won't bring up no Aaron Bain slander will be heard on this. Oh, the way he's not full Aussie though, right?
We did claim him, and now we're kind of offering him back to New Zealand.
Okay, that's right. That's what the lineage is.
Yeah, I've been scouting Baines at the Brisbane Bullets just to.
Can you give us the update? Like I feel like Celtics fans would actually be kind of interested. Does he look like himself?
Early season, I thought he looked pretty good. Looked like a man among boys. Lately, he hasn't looked as good. I honestly don't know how much better he's going to be than Luke Cornett at this point.
Lukey 4 blocks.
Which. A month ago, Lukey 4 blocks wasn't a thing, but now today, hitting threes.
I took a victory lap on my podcast tonight. I said, go back and look at the comments we did a Luke Cornett episode the night before I knew he was going to get ramped up in minutes. And all the comments were like, you're doing a podcast about some bozo who isn't even going to play. Like this dude isn't even an NBA player. And now everyone's jumping on the Cornett bandwagon. I mean, everything, the Cornett corner with the 3-pointer was awesome, and like the bench was into it. I mean, the stupid reverse dunk.
The reverse dunks.
What is this celebration? He's doing like Marty Moose or something there. I don't know, but I am all about the Luke Cornett experience, and if nothing else, I know people were really worried about that position, but like he's held it down really well and
fine.
Like, I don't think you could get much more from whatever player you were hoping to bring in. I think we saw it's nice to have sort of, again, I think Brad Stevens can sit there and go, you guys wanted a veteran. Well, here's Blake Griffin huffing and puffing up and down the court. Like, at least Luke is making good things happen. And, like, I do think there's a value in Blake. But, like, for everyone who was sitting here screaming and hollering about Dwight Howard, my God.
The value of Blake seems to come with the vibes, which is a whole other podcast. Yeah. But like he does have an impact and value there, a tangible value, and clearly like we've seen that permeate through Peyton Pritchard, who's been great, and it feels like Blake has been propping him up, and where he serves the team best, Blake, this is as a savvy veteran, is his propping up of guys like Pritchard and guys who don't have like a certified role on the team. But yeah, Luke Cornett, like Spoonie and I were right on the forefront of like, we don't believe in this guy. We don't see. I don't know what Brad sees in this, but there you go. The Chris Forsberg foresight there in predicting his impact on the team.
Again, so I don't have a lot of inside information, but I do trust what people tell me they see that I don't see, and so sometimes you don't know if you're blowing smoke. I also can tell you that a certain president of basketball operations told me a long time ago that James Young had like the best off season and gained 15 pounds of muscle. And then I actually got to sit down with James Young and I was like, doesn't feel like this is all true, but like, I'm going to write this story and be like, hey, here comes this guy. He's going to be great. Year 2, here we go. And that did not pan out. So, you take your wins with your losses. And but yeah, like there was a lot of hype about Luke, a lot of hype about Sam, and they've warranted it with the way that they've played.
Absolutely. House money. I feel like we're ready to move on from the game. Like we were talking about before you dropped on the call, Forsberg, like really it just comes down to this team is fucking awesome. And they're just like, they have...
It's weird. Like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was more of a fan than a reporter when like the 08 team. So my buddies bought season tickets. I don't know. I'm sorry if I'm boring you guys with the story that I've told you before, but like, so my buddies were all, they thought in advance of the lottery, they thought they were getting Odin or Durant. So they put in for season tickets. They get it. Then one of our buddies got a job as like a season ticket guy out at the Clippers. So he left to go. My other buddy needed someone to go with. And so I was covering high school sports at the Boston Globe at that point and like just kind of helping with pro sports when they needed somebody. And so I went to probably 30 of those 40 home games that year just as like a fan and sat up in the balcony. And it was weird that they were like that good, like that every night was Gino dancing on the Jumbotron. And I remember like I spent the whole year trying to process like what they're so good after they lost 17 games. And this is even weirder because they were in the finals last year. I should have had some level of expectation that they would be good. And yet I'm watching this and I'm like, how the hell are they this good? Like it was 3 months ago they had multiple holes in their game. And now they've shored everything up. And Rob's not even out there yet.
No, exactly.
I just struggle to wrap my head around it. I try not to be, because people always complain about my network being overly optimistic, and certainly I probably get more excited than I do pessimistic. Although if you watched last year, you know that I lost my mind 100 times. But yeah,
it's a safe space as well, Forsberg. You can overreact here.
I want to be mad about something. There's nothing to be mad about.
Too many Tatum minutes. Should have pulled him like 2 minutes earlier tonight. Come on, Joe.
Yeah.
Come
Blake
on.
Griffin played the 4 for a short period of time. We can be mad about that.
Double beers, Cornette and Blake.
Joe's timeout usage is the only thing that I can religiously get upset about. And even that, like, it probably bears out if you looked at the numbers that he did the right thing. So I don't know.
All right, well, we could sing the praises of this team all night, and we kind of have to some degree already, but we do have some other things to move on to. Very quick, minute shout out to Al Horford as well, who had another fantastic game there. But moving on, this Friday, Chris Forsberg, will be the 8-week mark on Rob's injury return timeline. So presuming he will come back at some point, and we know you're the world's leading expert on Time Lord. How do you think that Joe Mazzulla, who is running things differently from an offensive perspective, how do you think that he's going to reintegrate Rob Williams into the offense? And do you think there's a risk at all that he's going to clog the paint at all, or sort of
course. So
this is going to be an upheaval?
This is my fear, is that Rob comes back, the offensive numbers plummet, and then Rob is like the scapegoat for why they've gone in the tank. I do think, in theory, adding a rim runner should create more space for some of their shooters, but certainly the fact that they've been able to spread it out as much as they have and sort of whip the ball around the perimeter, now you're adding what is essentially a non-shooter, even though I have seen him, do pretty good with that mid-range, and I think he'll eventually stretch out to the perimeter at some point in his career, as like every big man that comes through Boston eventually does. But yeah, like I do think there's an adjustment that goes with it, and like how you run your offense changes a little bit. And so I am eager to see. And it goes back to that balance, right? Like if Rob elevates your defense enough, does it offset any dip in the offense? It comes down to like aesthetically, as Spoon has pointed out, like it's really fun to watch this team right now. I don't want them to necessarily change anything. And yet to be the best version of themselves, they might have to. Or, I guess the thing is like, you can still put him out there. And if for whatever reason it doesn't work, you can go small quick. You have options to flip it and kind of stagger how you bring guys back. I don't suspect it's going to be an issue long term. But I think especially at the first few games or whatever, it is going to be an adjustment, and they're going to have to figure that out. And I'm preparing every defense imaginable for why it is not Rob's fault, and that people need to be patient. And and that too is weird. That like it felt like first 5 games we're all sitting here going, "Oh, Rob, get back," and now people are going to be all complaining that they don't have a 5th shooter on the court.
Yeah, I've been saving my Blink-182 I Miss You Rob Williams video for like a month now, and I'm fine to save it. But yeah, I'm not worried at all with the Rob Williams thing. I mean, you talk about like fun to watch. He's like one of the funnest players in the league to watch on both ends.
The funnest.
Tier 1 Rob Williams, tier 2
fun.
Steph Curry. I think that's the order.
Just accurate.
Yeah, exactly. It's just facts, science again. But then, the offense as well, something I think we looked at today, we're 26th in offensive rebounding right now. Rob Williams is one of the best offensive rebounders in the league. Any dip we're going to get, which I don't really expect a massive one. You're replacing, Luke Cornett, who's not really spacing the floor right now, or whatever the non-Al Horford minutes are with Rob Williams. I'm not worried at all about the offense really taking a massive step specifically because of Rob, especially when you're adding in the offensive rebounding and the lob threat. Like, it's kind of wild how few lobs we get relative to when Rob Williams plays. Even though Luke can get up there just a little bit. But the Celtics have always been bad at throwing lobs, which is why we need someone like Rob who can actually throw down some of these haywire passes.
And think of it, Rob's MO is, as soon as he gets the ball, he wants to get rid of it. Like the pace could be even faster because he's going to be so adamant to push that ball. I don't know. I think kicking out offensive rebounds, I do see the potential for him to further enhance this offense. I'm already preparing for the numbskulls in my mentions.
Absolutely.
We'll be in there defending you. Don't you worry.
Thank you. I appreciate that. In my army.
That's right.
Yet. So I don't know. It's it is neat to sort of be a part of it. I've never had such a play. I've never covered a player that had such a high level. Like KG was coming the other way as I covered those final few years. Like you said, Pierce was just always so much better than his talent should have let him be. And yet Tatum just feels like he still hasn't even tapped into the full form of what he can be.
And you didn't even talk about his defense. He's leading the team in blocks. You know what I mean? Like, he's been awesome on that end too.
All defense, right? Like, I feel like we can start the campaign. Like, if we weren't so hell bent on making him the MVP, we'd be talking about how he should be all defense, and yet that'll just sort of be part of the conversation.
Yeah, it'll be, he's good at defense too. That no one will focus on it, because Jake makes this point all the time, and I think it's a great one. It's like, he's too good at offense for people to care about his defense. Yeah.
Like, Matisse Thybulle is the most overrated defender in the league because he can't shoot. And again, one of my Australian sons, I'm slandering my own.
Careful.
I know. Unless he's playing for the Boomers, it's the only time he can hit a freaking 3. But overrated because his only job is to and he gets cooked by Jalen and Jason every time.
All the time.
Yeah, playing for Philly really confuses
That's what
me.
happens. You go to Philly and they just rob you of everything.
Speaking of the guy who has empowered Jason Tatum, Joe Mazzulla. So your position, Forsberg, you obviously have a lot closer perspective of the team than we do. And Joe has been around for a long time. He was there pre-COVID. So from your experience, did you ever think he would be this good, especially coming out of the gate? I mean, did you ever get the inclination or hear from Brad or this guy could be a head coach one day, maybe in the past couple years? What is your sort of pre-head coach Joe Mazzulla experience?
I'll detail it like this. My first remembrance of Joe becoming a thing for me was when Kemba arrived. He was Kemba's guy, right? They had the Big East ties, and so he worked almost exclusively with Kemba, or not only exclusively, but he was Kemba's guy. So he was the one doing shooting drills after practice, the one who went back with and did shots at night, and so they were constantly around each other. And Kemba had told me something about, he had to make, I think it was 300 makes or something, and he timed himself every time, and he set some record right before they went back to Charlotte for his homecoming game. And I was riding an elevator, and Mazzulla would just happen to be there. I was like, Kemba said he got it in some absurd amount of time, 12 minutes or something like that. And he was like, he told you that? And I was like, yeah. And so he was very quiet, very kind of reserved. And that's the way he's been and unfortunately, just because of the pandemic, we haven't been around them a whole lot. I can say I was I was a little bit surprised when I heard that he was part of the Utah interviews. Like, I knew Danny had a great deal of respect for him, but I didn't know that the hype around the league maybe had advanced to a level where he was in considerations for those things. And so much of the attention was on Will Hardy and all that too, that it just masked like how much they liked Joe. And so the other thing that I know has been well documented is when they were deciding, who was going to stay on from Brad's staff, they sort of went to the players and said, like, what do you think? And unequivocally from every guy, like, they were like, we like Joe, and Joe has our trust, and Joe knows the defense, which is crazy because it's all about the offense right now.
Yeah.
But they wanted him around, and think it's telling that he was the only assistant that survived that changeover. And so, but even with all that, when he gets promoted, I said, okay, so he'll have some Brad-like tendencies because he was, part of that Brad ecosystem and learned under that. I didn't know he would be a exact clone of Brad. And I do think we probably make too much of the little things that they're very similar at, but they are, like, to me, they are strikingly similar in the way they carry themselves, in what they reveal, in their timeout usage, in various things that were very noticeable with Brad. Now, the first time someone hits a game winner and Joe like calmly walks to midcourt and shakes someone's hand, we'll know if he's exactly that way. But I think there's more to Joe than we've seen. I think even in these 15 games, I've seen him get more comfortable. He's sort of opened up a little bit more and joked a little bit more in those press conferences. And I just think that like any new coach has to get used to that. But especially a guy who gets thrown in to the crazy situation that he did. And then, I mean, the bubblegum thing is just amazing. So if I don't understand how Bazooka Joe hasn't taken on a bigger thing. Like, I don't know if internationally that plays, but like Bazooka Gum was a pretty big deal for any kid who grew up here in the States.
Yes.
And so watching him chomp away, if Bazooka Joe doesn't take off at some point, I'm going to be very disappointed.
There's an endorsement there somewhere, I'm sure.
100%.
If it still exists.
Abby said that he chews pure gum, which I can't even say I understand or know what that is. But if they haven't called him already, in the same way that the Rolex watch is reaching out to Rob for the Time Lord stuff, there's just obvious opportunities out there. And if this dude could give you a lot of exposure thinking about like playoffs and like how much they show him, and he's always gnawing on that gum. So like strike while you can, or else I'm gonna have to like invent a gum brand that he really likes so that I can get the marketing.
I can see it now. It's gonna be like Doris Burke. Game 3 of the finals is going to cut to Joe, and there's going to be like some way too in-depth like thing about Joe chewing gum.
And she nailed it. Every time she had to explain Time Lord, she did a very good job.
Yeah,
with it. So,
she's the one for that stuff.
Every game of the playoffs, we had to get that explanation.
So moving on a little bit, came out today, Windhorst, kind of, he's always half reporting stuff. But Jakob Poeltl to the Celtics. Celtics have interest. Forsberg, I don't know if you have any like insight, but I don't even think it's possible that we can trade.
Isn't this the number one thing? I don't think I believe because of the fact that that Gallinari got waived.
Yeah. From the Spurs.
I don't know if they can necessarily, and I don't know, there is some rules about like if you get waived, if you go to another team, I forget the Ilgaskis or the whatever it was in Cleveland that set up this whole ability to reacquire a player. I have not checked deep enough into that, in part because I just don't know if it makes sense. Like, we can watch Jakob Poeltl and be like, that guy's awesome and would be the perfect sort of bruiser. Everything I wanted from like a healthy Baines is what he's doing, and yet like he's in a contract year. And why in the world would he want to be a backup for once like everybody's healthy on this team? I just don't see a roadmap to a lot of playing time. And just the answer to every question that we've thrown out so far, there's Luke Cornett. Yeah. So I mean,
Lukey 4 blocks.
So I've said, and I was a little hesitant about this proclamation before the season, but every time it got brought up, I would say, I think probably like wing depth is going to be more important at the trade deadline than necessarily a big man. And I probably still feel that way because all I can flash back to is like Celtics having no answer for the Warriors' depth and like Wiggins and what he did. And it's just like you just needed one extra defender, somebody that could just allow Jason or Jalen to actually breathe for 5 minutes. And they certainly have more depth already, but I just feel like that's probably going to be more of a position of need than necessarily center, where if Al and Rob are healthy, I'm not sure you need too much more. Now, that all believes that Rob stays healthy. That's all like Al continues to defy all sort of aging. And, and there will be nights where we'll still shake our hands about not enough big man depth, but they got Luke. So I feel like it'll be all right.
Yeah, like big man, that spot I think is kind of the easiest spot in the league to just manage 10 to 15 minutes a night, which the Celtics, when the rest of the team is so freaking good, like you just need to get your arms up, be 7 foot tall, make the right pass, and catch reverse lob dunks.
That's all you gotta do.
And block 4 shots a game.
Marty Moose or whatever.
Yeah, we got to figure that out. I don't know what's going on there.
Pirtle will cost real tangible assets.
Yeah, it'll be a first at least.
Like if you were gonna trade another first round pick, Gallinari's contract, and probably like Pritchard, he needs to be able to like play in the finals.
Yeah.
I'm not sure Jakob Pertl can play in the finals. So if you're using what is like really the last gun in the bullet to improve this team, I don't think a guy who will only be here for 1 year and is taking Luke Cornett's spot as a 15-minute per game backup is really the move, in my opinion. So yeah, I'm with you, Forsberg. Find a big wing. Find another Grant Williams type guy who can guard big and shoot threes.
We go back to your searching for the Al secession plan. Like
that's right, exactly.
Yeah. So
what's PJ doing?
Let's check on those Hornets.
Yeah, they're terrible.
It might be available.
Yeah.
And to your point, Forsberg, on the wing depth, like I think we're all a little bit shocked, even with the injury outages today, to see Justin Jackson play like non-garbage time minutes. So I think
he looks surprised.
I think Justin Jackson was surprised.
Absolutely.
to be playing minutes. Yeah. So like the more depth you can have there, the better I'll feel going in. I just think that's probably the more likely. And same deal, like there'll probably be a more robust market for that spot, hopefully. If Brad's going to spend another first round pick, it better be someone that has a long-term design here. And I just don't see them spending the capital it would take to bring someone on a final year contract. They learned from the Fournier experience of too long ago.
Absolutely. Now, shifting back to your, I guess, coverage of the team, while COVID is still very prominent in our world, COVID restrictions have certainly been lifted. How has that changed your, I guess, ability and your experience covering the team, and what sort of prior elements of covering the team have returned, and has anything new sort of come into fruition in terms of how you're able to cover the team?
Nothing really new. I would say it's just been a relief. I mean, even the guards started to come down a little bit with the finals, and even though we were still all like masked up and all that, we hadn't had like the ability to go on the court and talk to players during like a practice day since pre-pandemic. And so like having that ability to be closer to players, to actually be able to get like one-on-one conversations was almost jarring. I'll be honest, like I'd forgotten what it was like to do my job because you just got so used to being on Zooms all the time and just always being a pack of reporters. And honestly, it sort of sucked the life. And that's a terrible expression for COVID, but like, it's just, you couldn't get anything different. You couldn't, like, it was very hard to be a good reporter in those instances. And shout out to the people that did find ways to be creative. But it was hard for like, I think for just what I was used to. Training camp and the first couple weeks of the season were awesome because the team was practicing a ton. There was like a lot of breaks in the schedule. Ever since November's rolled around, it's been the complete opposite. There hasn't been a lot of time. I haven't been on the road a whole lot to start the season, so I don't get the benefit of the morning shoot-arounds when they're on the road. And yet, like still, like I will never complain because there's so much more opportunity even before games, and just, locker rooms are open again. Being able to see just them interact in the locker room, it doesn't sound like a big deal, but you can get a lot better sense of how guys interact and how like the vibes are when you're in there than you can on a Zoom call. So it's been a nice relief to sort of have that human instinct back, and hopefully the stories are better. Hopefully, like, the insight is better. I feel more comfortable. Definitely, like, being more like, this is something I've seen, or whatever. And it's just in general, it's been a relief. I think back to the other night, like, Peyton Pritchard has that great game against Oklahoma City and is up there probably in front of the reporters for probably the first time this year in a post-game setting. And Blake is just staring at him from his locker because they have, that bro-ness going on right now. And someone said, like, what's that connection like? And Peyton, without missing a beat, and he's a pretty dry guy. He's looks over at Blake and he's like, "Oh, Blake, I hate that guy," and then just like goes on to the next answer. Doesn't even like blink. And no, so it's fun to see that there is like legitimate human interactions with these guys, and so that's been nice.
Yeah, speaking of legitimate human interaction, after that Oklahoma City win, you had what was one of my favorite on the court post-game interviews with Marcus Smart, where basically every member of the team came over and rubbed his head or like patted his butt, or I think it was Jalen jumped on his back and it was like, "Whoa, Jalen, let's chill, buddy." It was just like an awesome moment, and the clip is hilarious and it went viral. So when you're in the middle of that type of interview where like it's just kind of crazy, like, do this is going great and this is hilarious? Yeah,
because and so what's funny is, so a couple things to dive way too deep into our business. So like, I am not a good sideline reporter because I am long-winded, and trying to fit anything interesting into 30 seconds and spit out as many numbers as I yearn to do is super difficult. And so I think I did like 3 hits during the game, and I could say like 1 was coherent, and the rest were just me screaming words, trying to get through them, knowing that play was starting back on the court. And so this is why I have the ultimate adoration for Abby, because she is so good at it, and she makes it look so easy, and it drives me so nuts because like I just can't do it, and I get really nervous when I have to do that role because it's not what I'm good at. I want to be good at it, like just so that in instances where we need a body, I can go over there and do it. It's so funny because a lot of people will say to me, "Oh, it must be like really nervous when you have to do those interviews." No, like those interviews are the easiest thing. Like, I can talk to a player about a game or whatever, but if you're telling me that I have to tell you 30 seconds about why the pick and roll is working, like, I'm going to need an hour and a half. So it's very difficult. So I was feeling like pretty crappy about like how the night had gone to that point, and almost by luck. So whenever there's a national outlet there, they get first crack at who they want to talk to. And then, it sort of trickles down. So then like we get somebody's radio, Celtics media, like, so we're all waiting to like kind of figure out what the cue is going to be. And NBA TV happened to choose Jason Tatum and said that no matter what happened in the game, they were going with Tatum, which made sense. Like, Tatum was really good, and like Tatum is a big story, and from a national perspective, that makes a ton of sense. And so I think the Celtics PR expected me to go with Jalen because Jalen was also having a pretty good game. And I think there was about 4 minutes to go, and I said, sometimes you just have this feeling. I said, pencil me in for Smart, just for now, and like we'll see how the final couple minutes play out, and if someone hits a big basket, maybe I'll audible. But then it was Smart who hit the big basket. And so I felt really good going into it. And then, like selfishly, all I'm trying to do in those instances, like, how can I get 3 questions out that make some sort of sense? And I felt pretty good that I had 3. But when you see everybody coming out, like, that's all you're hoping for, like some sort of like moment beyond just the interview. And like, I won't profess that it was any of my doing. It's just, I picked the right guy, and I was in the right spot, for them walking off the court and like dumb luck stuff. But likewise, in a season that I felt there was pretty good vibes, especially coming out of training camp, and once they started games and once they saw how good they could be, that sort of crystallized it for me, like just how excited those guys were that Marcus had that. Because remember, it was like a pretty bumpy start for Marcus in terms of like how the year had gone, and it was fair to question like what's going on. Like, he just wasn't himself on really either end. Last 6 or 7 games have been completely the opposite. And I just feel fortunate that I was in a good spot so that everyone could piggyback on Marcus Smart.
That might be like more of a sign of your professionalism than anything else, that like you had a sense in that OKC game that like Smart is the ideal interview candidate, like that you just
Yes.
you're
He was-
so
He was
tuned to
having
the
like a
Celtics.
pretty good game, and I felt like in the fourth quarter, even before the finish, he wasn't necessarily scoring all the points at that point. Although I guess he had 20 of his 22 in the second half.
That's right.
But I felt like he was really impacting it, and beyond, again, no offense to Josh Giddey, but his lunch money getting taken every 30 seconds.
It did happen.
It felt like Smart was going to have some part in whatever happened, and just dumb luck.
I think that's good for Josh Giddey. He'll learn from that. Yeah, like you've obviously done some awesome interviews. I think some of Celtics fans' favorites are specifically the Jalen and Jason interviews you've done at the beginning of both seasons. I think with so much talk about their relationship, having those interviews, it was like
But
surely
then people
Celtics porn.
people then get so mad that I asked those questions, and I was
Yeah,
like,
well, but what if? Screw those people,
Thank
dude.
you, thank you. Well, but, like, it's hard not to, but like the YouTube commenters were very, very mad that 2 years in a row I asked them about their relationship, and I don't know, like for me that's a question I get a lot, and so if I'm getting it, I feel like there must be interest to find that answer, and same sort of thing. Like one of our bosses here said, like, what do you think if we could get these guys together 2 years ago? And I was like, oh my God, that would be amazing. I also said there's no chance it's going to happen, and then just like by some stroke of luck, like they just were crossing like ships in the night, and we were like, hey, can we get both you guys? And they were like, sure. We're like, oh my God. And so then it led to this year, and you've got maybe 5 minutes of them together, and you're just trying to get something that's interesting. And I love their dynamic when they're together, because even as Jason becomes more vocal, Jalen still dominates sort of the conversation in that moment, and is so much more, on that day, it felt like Jalen had stuff on his mind and he wanted to speak, and even kind of challenging Tatum to be more vocal in that instance. Like, I thought that was really neat. And, the funny part about that is we tape a lot of those, and it's not something you're going to run and put up the first night, but so I sat there for 2 weeks going, when are we running this? When are we running this? When are we running this? But yeah, it was neat to see. It's fascinating to me because we don't get to see how stars interact very often. And then to force them into that situation, at least allows them to give us a glimpse. So yet again, I feel very fortunate. It just, happens to be my role that day. And I don't think it's a particular, like, I'm not asking any like mind-numbing questions. I think anyone could think of some of these stuff to ask them. It's just I'm fortunate that they've had some good responses as well.
I mean, you talk about having limited time with them, and you've spoken about how you prefer to spend 90 minutes talking about the pick and roll versus 30 seconds. Like, what does, like, if you could choose your interview partner, the format, the length, like, you give us a basketball option, non-basketball option. What does that look like for Forsberg?
Yeah, so it's funny. I'll tell you this like story too, because it's always like makes me laugh. Is that when I was at ESPN, they came to us and they were like deciding what they wanted to do. I forget what we call it. Was before the Hoop Collective. It was like Basketball Friends or some name, and they didn't know what the exact schedule was going to be. And I got to do like a podcast with my friend Nick Friedel, who does the Nets now, and then it was on the Bulls, and then went to the Warriors, and he's my favoror person from ESPN.
Big year for Nick Friedel.
Yeah, I mean he is amazing, and and it was funny though, because I wasn't a big podcast guy at that point. Like I wasn't listening to podcast. I mean, I listened to Simmons podcast, or like every now and then I would listen to something, but I wasn't like binging them in the way I guess I do now. And I remember actually telling Nick at one point, I'm like this is so. Isn't this what we should have done like 10 years ago? Why are we doing podcasts now? Podcasts are going out. Like, this is so old. Like, this is never going to work. And so I probably wasn't as diligent as I should have been in like preparing and being good at that and like embracing the situation. It's always something I kick myself about, because years later I get here and it's like, hey, we have this podcast, Celtics Talk. And it becomes my favorite thing, because you have an hour to talk about the pick and roll if you want. And you can have interviews, you can do stupid stuff, you can talk about nonsense, and it probably fits my personality better. So I think in this day and age, because I work for a TV station, you want everything on camera. So I would love, and obviously we do even you guys, we do podcasts now that have video. And so it doesn't have to necessarily be a sit down interview, but I would love long form, ability to talk to players, ability to like see beyond the basketball court. We don't do enough of that, in part because like they're really busy and it's hard sometimes to just get that access and get that glimpse. But yeah, and then like I really liked our podcast from the playoffs, and I roped Abby into it. I was just like, look, you're here. You're gonna come and talk about these games afterward, and I want you to scream and shout and have opinions. Don't feel like you have to just like ask me the questions. So, and I thought she was awesome at it. There was like a great energy, and so I think the key to any successful show, podcast, interview, whatever you're doing, is just having the right people around you, the right energy. And I mean, man, I'm sounding like Jalen now with like energy shifts and stuff like that.
Yes.
But yeah, if you're having fun, it's going to permeate through everything you do. And so I try not to take anything too seriously anymore. I like, especially when I first started doing TV, I was very uptight about everything just because I was so worried about it. And so now I just go in and I'm like, hey, I'm gonna suck at sideline tonight. It's gonna be awesome. I'm gonna wear a sweater so that people point to that more than they point to me tripping over my words. And yeah, we'll see where it goes. But I really do. I think, as you guys can probably attest, the podcast has opened up a whole new world for us. And I can't believe how many stupid Celtics podcasts I listen to now. And not that they're stupid. Everyone does their own. And then I take everyone else's great ideas and then I make my own podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all part of the fun. So that actually segues nicely into the last question, and we'll finish up on this. But the Celtics Talk podcast, which you are the very wonderful host of, has taken on a little bit of a new form this year. And that you're and I'm guessing that's what you were doing immediately after the post-game show today,
yes.
Forsberg, is and you're going to beat us first to the press, even though we've had you on as a post-game guest.
Very clever.
I was going to say, if you could just change your name to Second to the Floor.
Yeah. It's in the works. Don't worry. We're getting the logos adjusted as we speak. You guys are doing immediate post-game, or I say you guys, you are doing immediate post-game.
No, it's you guys, because first off, like, and this is one of the luxuries that working for a big network has. We have podcast producers who allow me, like, we get done our post-game show, and what we decided this year was just like, I'm going to go in a room and I'm going to record 6 to 10 minutes of me rambling, which I don't love because, like, I do think podcasts work better when you have someone to play off of and it's just not me talking all the time. And so I sometimes worry that, it's a little bit droning. And I probably say the word but and transition like 1,000 times, but I do what I can. And then they stitch together that with some of the highlights from our post-game show, which we probably don't, we want to highlight anyway, because if you missed it or whatever, and then I can't believe how fast these people are these people behind the scenes, Casey and Adam and Annie. So like they all deserve shout outs for how fast they're working, because I do my part and then I'm on to whatever's next. And it's I don't know though. Like I do worry. It's I forgot how many games there are.
Yeah.
There's no way anyone's listening to all of them. And yet, like, it takes a lot of stress off me because I used to worry. I don't write as much right after games anymore. It's hard to start writing at midnight and, have something, there's not any editors at certain hours. And so I usually come back the next day with writing, but I have all these thoughts and feelings and they're not exactly fleshed out at that point, but it's good to just be able to vocalize it a little bit. And so hopefully after games like this, people are eager and interested. And I hope people wake up or before they go to bed or wherever, with you guys being on different continents. Like I hope you're listening to this stuff whenever it hits, but it makes me feel at ease because, there's something out there for people to digest after games. And, look, we'll see where the numbers take us and if that is, but, shout out to Corrales too. Like he started doing this, like a year and a half ago, more. And I mean, he's the OG of all this. But I mean, when my first days at ESPN, I remember calling into whatever Celtics show he was doing at that point with
Red's Army.
Red's Army, yeah.
And like again, that's when I was like, oh, podcast, yes, this is the next big thing. By 10 years later, I was like completely out on him. And John's parlayed it into like a being really good at this whole media job. So I'm not trying to step on his toes. It's just we have the resources, and I'm very lucky in that regard to be able to spin it out there. But I need again, it's all sort of like a test kitchen. I need to gauge the diehards out there and figure out if they like it, if the midweek episode that we don't sort of focus in on a game, is that getting swallowed up by the fact that we have 5 episodes a week because of all the games. I don't know this stuff, but I guess I'd rather have more content than less. And
absolutely.
We'll see
Yeah, I
where
mean,
it
it all comes out of the appetite for content, which was certainly the catalyst for this podcast. Myself personally, just got through listening to all podcasts at the end of a particular day, scrolling through all Twitter, Reddit, and just feeling like I wasn't satiated, like I wasn't enough. Let's start a podcast. That was 5 years ago, and now here we are talking to you. So,
well, I go back to it. I know there's been people out there that have railed against the idea that non-media could have a podcast or whatever.
Oh yeah, that was
Yes.
What a crazy clip. But yeah, for someone who I think a lot of my coverage is geared around the idea of I ask my friends all the time, I'm like, what's interesting to you? What do you want to know about this team? Because that's our consumer. For me, it's really important to be doing stuff that people are interested in. And so, I'm always trying to gauge feedback. So as much as if you come at me with something critical, I'll probably block you on Twitter. But no, I like the feedback. I read the comments. I don't care. I've got enough thick skin now. If something's not working, I'd rather fix it. But no, you guys know I'm a full supporter of what y'all got going on, and it's cool to see it grow and blossom the way it has.
Absolutely. Well, look, Chris Forsberg, we're very thankful, as always, for you coming on the show. We're very appreciative of everything that you do and the time that you spend. And like you said, the consideration that you have of the appetite for content out there and how you try and accommodate that. It's very notable in watching you do the work that you do. So job very well done, sir, as always. And thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. And thank you for having, how did I end up with the worst background out of all you guys? I'm supposed to be a damn professional.
If I shifted the camera either way, you would feel differently. There's garbage everywhere.
Same.
That is going to do it for this one. Thank you for tuning in. Remember to like, subscribe, comment, share. All of those little things to help our show are much appreciated. Huge thanks to Chris Forsberg, who is always great value, always super generous with his time. And of course, big thanks to Wayne Spooney and Jake Eisenberg. We'll be back with another pod in the next few days. In the meantime, 8 straight wins.